Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. Now these applicants, if they're eligible, they have to find and book your own rooms. And there's a list of participating hotels, and it's posted at disasterassistance.gov, and it's under the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. You can also get it again by calling the FEMA helpline, 1-800-621-3362. For TTY, call 800-462-7585, and for 911 or video relay service, call 800-621-3362. Including EMAC and Title X forces, there are 8,406 service members activated in support of current operations in Louisiana, and that includes the entirety of the Louisiana National Guard. Of that number that I just gave you, we've received 2,676 guardsmen from other states pursuant to the request we made through the EMAC process. And just to give you an illustration of how this really is a team effort, not just here in Louisiana, but across the country, the 11 states who've sent National Guardsmen are Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kansas, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. And we are integrating them into our operations here across southeast Louisiana. Additional forces from Alabama, Kentucky, and South Carolina will arrive later today. In addition to all of that, there are 347 active duty service members who are working in Louisiana in support of Hurricane Ida response operations. Today, the National Guard is supporting 64 points of distribution in 3 hubs across 16 parishes. 12 additional pods are staging today. Thus far, and this is really as of last night, the National Guard has distributed right at 2.5 million meals, 117,000 tarps, more than 2.7 million liters of water, about 250,000 sandbags, and 377,000 bags of ice. Electricity continues to be very challenging across southeast Louisiana. There's been significant progress, but there are currently 597,371 outages. That means businesses and customers. There's a lot more than 597,000 people without power. Now, the good news is that is down from about 1 billion at the peak. But there are still a number of parishes that are hovering right at 100% outage, and we're in one of them. St. Lyman in the state working to restore power, and we certainly want to thank them too, because they come from about 32 different states as well. Generator safety. But carbon monoxide poisoning has already claimed some lives after the hurricane. Please make sure that you're safely operating your generator at least 20 feet from your home in a well-ventilated area, not next to a window or a door, not in a crawl space or a garage or under your house or anything like that, and certainly not in your house. Let it cool down for 20 minutes before you refuel. And if you have a professionally installed home generator that services your whole home, you need to also take a look at that. We've had a few issues there as well. And so make sure that is functioning properly and safely. Carbon monoxide detector is absolutely critical, no matter how familiar you are with using a generator. Just to put some numbers with this, in the past 4 days, we've had at least 82 visits to the emergency departments in our hospitals across southeast Louisiana from people who suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. And 4 of the 13 deaths that I mentioned earlier have been attributable to carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't taste it, you don't smell it, you have no idea that it's there. And very, very sadly, it often gets whole families because they'll turn on the generator, go to sleep, and that's what happens. With respect to the heat, that remains a challenge as well, with heat indexes getting up to about 105 degrees every day. So drink water, take breaks. Look, your yard probably needs to be cleaned. It doesn't all have to be cleaned today. As of 7:30 this morning, DOTD was still reporting 60 weather-related closures. We have already started picking up debris in the following parishes: Ascension, Assumption, St. James, St. Bernard, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Helena, and Livingston. And over the next 20, compromised and are inoperable, either because of to either marine or vehicular traffic. So they're just, it's other, but not both. And destroyed. And again, there are many, many more residences to be assessed. As of 8 o'clock this morning, there were 3,560 people being sheltered in 23 shelters across the state. If you need any shelter information, if you're looking for a shelter, please text LA Shelter to 898-211, or you can call 211. Louisiana's federal DSNAP request is in process, but residents can pre-register now for DSNAP. This is the Disaster SNAP Assistance, and then it will be much easier for you to access these benefits if and when it's approved, and it will be approved. It's just a matter of time. And DSNAP always follows the storm by 3 to 4 weeks, because you can't load people's cards until grocery stores are open in their area. It really doesn't do them any good. So we got to get to a certain threshold of stores that are open and stocked, and then we will be running DSNAP. We've actually pioneered the process of doing virtual DSNAP last year after Laura, and we will do that again this year because of the COVID environment. But you can text LA DSNAP to 898-211 for more information. We're also working to get mass replacement benefits for SNAP recipients in parish where at least half of the residents lost power. Information. We're also working to get mass replacement benefits for SNAP recipients in parish where at least half of the residents lost power for 24 hours or more. I am getting to the bottom of information, and others will be able to apply. So we'll be DCFS has launched Connect as a way for families to locate loved ones who evacuated from Hurricane Ida to a state shelter. So if you're looking for DCFS has launched Connect as a way for families to locate loved ones who evacuated from Hurricane Ida to a state shelter. So if you're looking for someone, or you can fill out a form at DCFS.Louisiana.27 between the hours of 7 and 7. Connect. To reach the privacy and safety reasons, or you can fill out a form at DCFS cannot confirm the identity of people staying in shelters, but we will determine whether the person is in a state shelter and pass privacy and safety reasons. The caller's message. DCFS cannot confirm the identity. People searching for loved ones in a disaster area can also use safeandwell.communityoS.org. That's safeandwell. People searching for loved ones in a disaster area can also use safeandwell.communityoS.org. That's safeandwell.communityoS.org. It's a website set up by the American Red Cross, someone to try to locate missing nursing homes that have been evacuated to the facility in Independence, Louisiana. You can connect with the state as well. Member of someone who was rescued from the 7 nursing homes that have been evacuated. So at this point, I'm going to ask our congressman to come up. You can connect share some comments with you. Then I'll come back to make just a couple of concluding remarks. So at this point, I'm going to ask our congressman to come up. and share some comments.
Thank you,
with then
Governor,
I'll
and thank
come
you all
back,
for being here, Mr.
make
President.
just a couple of
and,
concluding remarks. And then
many
we'll take your
officials who've
questions.
come together,
Congressman?
who've been working day in and day out. Your efforts.
Thank you,
are
Governor,
duly
and
noted.
thank you all for being here,
At the
Mr.
risk of being
President.
redundant, I'm going to just
Many
talk
officials
about a
who've
few
come
things
together,
that
who've been
require
working
day
day
in
in
and day out.
It's
Your
meritorious
efforts
and
are duly
redundancy.
noted.
We
At the
know
risk
it's
of being
hot.
redundant, I'm going to just
We know it's
talk
hot,
about a few things that
and
require,
we have
senior citizens,
meritorious
children,
and
we have
redundancy.
animals, we have people
We
with
know it's
disabilities.
hot. We know it's
If
hot.
you can, and during the day, senior citizens,
If your
we
power
have
is
children, we have animals,
Open
we
the
have people
doors,
with
go outside,
disabilities.
sit under a tree.
If you can,
And
stay
during
as
the day,
hydrated as you
if
possibly
your power
can.
is out.
For our neighbors who are getting their
Open
power
the
turned
doors,
on,
go outside,
power
sit under a
is starting to
tree.
gradually come back in certain
and
areas.
stay as
hydrated
If
as
your
you
power
possibly
is
can.
on,
For our neighbors
check
who
on
are
your
getting their
neighbors.
power turned on, check
Power
on
is
those in the
starting to
surrounding
gradually-
neighborhoods who may not have power. This is now a great time for us to demonstrate the resiliency and the love for each other as a strong community that we know we are. Reach out to your friends, reach out to people you don't know, try to provide resources to assist. Entergy is working around the clock. There's some 25,000 time for us to demonstrate the resiliency and the love for each other. And many others have come to town to provide water and ice and food. Pods are set up throughout communities. If you have access to the internet, don't assume your neighbor does. A lot of the information that we're transmitting through the internet, through our cell phones, through those who may have power. Many don't. So if you have information, please share it with your neighbors. We're asking that you not go on the road a lot. We know gas is at a shortage, but to the extent that you can walk, that you can travel safely to your neighbors' homes and give information to them, it will be greatly appreciated. We have to remain calm and know that help is on the way and that every effort and possibility of manpower, people power, energy, and resources are being expended to get to you, to provide resources to you. The President and the administrator of FEMA were on the ground with us on Friday visiting throughout the state. The President has said in no uncertain terms that he commits the full faith and credit of the entire United States to not only building back, but building back better. We're going to be stronger, we'll be more resilient, we'll do things better than we've done before, and most importantly, know that we're trying to get resources to you just as fast as possible. God bless you all.
Thank you, Congressman. And tomorrow is Labor Day. And it certainly won't look like Labor Day's past, day when you typically picnic and stay home from work and enjoy time with family and friends. But you can still do things for family and friends. And you can do exactly what the Congressman just mentioned, and that is just be our normal Louisianan selves in times of need and in times of disaster. And I know that we will all do that. So please check on your neighbors, see what you can do for them as you take care of yourself and your family as well. The sense of community here, I think, really does set us apart, and it serves us so well in challenging times like those that we are currently facing. So with that, we will take a few questions. Yes, sir.
Hey, Governor, in addition to the 7 senior homes that you mentioned that have been shut down, yesterday 8 were evacuated in Southern Parish as well. A number of deaths, the death you mentioned earlier about the elderly person. Is there a better way for us to do this? We understand there's an unprecedented storm, knocking out power across the state. But those are the questions that many are asking with regards to how we are dealing with seniors in this situation.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, when you have a very, very powerful storm coming on shore, you know, evacuations are the proper thing to do. And that's always a tough call because you're dealing with a very frail and fragile population inside these shelters. And just the act of moving them can sometimes bring about, unfortunately, deaths. And we've seen this in more disaster evacuations than not, in certain numbers and so forth. So, you know, unfortunately, I think evacuations are going to be required. on occasion. The question is whether we are doing them the way that we should, and whether we're learning and incorporating those lessons learned into future evacuations and so forth. You know, and I don't have all the answers for that right now, but what I can tell you is there were dozens and dozens of nursing homes that did evacuate and that were able to shelter their residents in shelters that proved to be hardened sufficiently and were able to house the people safely and the conditions didn't deteriorate. That is obviously not what we saw in Independence, and I know that there's an investigation going on into that now, as there should be, and we're going to see exactly what that investigation reveals. What I can tell you is any loss of life is tragic, and we need to minimize that at every turn, and that certainly includes these evacuations and these shelters. Yes, sir.
I think yesterday you said you were monitoring a tropical weather system
Yeah.
in the south. Do you have any updates on that?
I do. Well, the weather's up, the National Weather Service this morning updated that at the Unified Command Group meeting. And there is still that weather system. They don't see much chance for development as of today, and we're very thankful for that. It is going to continue to move north and east across the Gulf. It does have the potential to bring some rain to coastal Louisiana, in southeast Louisiana, by the way, which we don't want and don't need. But as of right now, unless it changed since 9 o'clock this morning, they don't see much potential at all for it developing into a storm of any real significance. And we're very, very thankful for that, because that system started off in the same area and looked a lot like Ida did just a few days before landfall. But even if we don't get it from this storm, it is still early in the hurricane season. And you may remember last year we actually had 4 hurricanes that made landfall in Louisiana. This was the 5th one. Ida was the 5th one in 368 or so days, something like that. So we all have to be prepared for that next hurricane, and we have to assume that it's going to come before we are recovered from this one. It could come before we're finished actually responding to this one, and that makes it very, very hard to prepare for and respond to the next one. It's something we talked about here with the emergency operation at the Emergency Operations Center in St. James with all the parish officials. It's something we're talking about at the state, but it's also something we need families to talk about to make sure that they are as ready as they can possibly be.
Do you know any more than you did a few days ago about the nursing home residents who died?
No, I mean, I know the number, and I know that the coroner has confirmed that they are storm-related. I don't know that the specific causes of death have been determined, and those typically come out on the death certificates and so forth. I don't know any more about the deaths other than I believe we're reporting 5 now, and that's 5 of the total of 13 deaths that have been confirmed to be storm-related. Yes, sir.
5 different hurricanes mentioned yesterday, strained healthcare workers and different persons,
Yeah.
COVID, no power, infrastructure issues. Just wondering what keeps you up at night as Louisiana faces anything unprecedented jobs?
You know, a lot of things keep me up at night. Obviously, last night it was particularly difficult to sleep because I knew that we still had so much work to be done across the state, and I'm worried about this storm and its aftermath, restoring people with electricity, and in most cases that means their water services are going to be restored as well. That's a big key to getting all the refineries back into operation and getting enough fuel back into our gas stations and so forth. So electricity is really, really important to run our hospitals that were slammed just at 100% occupancy before the storm ever hit. It's all very challenging to know that we're still in the 4th surge of COVID. Now, we're doing better than we were, but we still have more people in the hospital today than we had at any point during the first 3 surges. And you know, I like to make this point, not because it warms my heart, but because it's important to make. 13 deaths from the storm thus far. The last 7 days that we reported, and we didn't report yesterday or today, the last 7 days we reported our COVID deaths over 350. So it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can to minimize transmission in cases, to minimize hospitalizations and deaths. And you know, our healthcare workers have just been slammed for a year and a half. You know, I've been asked about this today. You know, it happened here. The sheriff was mentioning it. People's emotionally just drained, and too many people across our great state have faced an awful lot of adversity over the last year and a half. And if you started that process with some mental illness problems, then they're probably much worse than they are. They're much worse today than they were before. I mean, you think about those hurricanes that I just mentioned. Think about the winter storm. Think about the May flood. Now this hurricane, and all of this happening during a pandemic. It's why I asked the president for a social services block grant. We haven't received one of those since Hurricane Katrina, but we know we have a lot of behavioral health needs. We have a lot of people with addiction disorder who need help. We need to do some things to strengthen our foster care system and foster families, because all of these disasters, this pandemic, it has an effect on all of that. And so we're really hopeful that we will get some additional assistance here in Louisiana.
Governor,
Yes, sir.
the president's visit, any results on directly getting more gasoline and power to the state?
Yeah. Well, in terms of more power, you're talking about electricity?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you that he had an opportunity to interact with Mr. Leo Denault, who is the CEO of not just of Entergy Louisiana, but of Entergy, the parent company, and stress the importance of doing that just as quickly as possible. And by the way, you know, for those areas of southeast Louisiana that had less damage to their generation facilities or to the transmission lines or their distribution lines, you can see pretty rapid restoration. Where you get to where the storm made landfall and hovered with the strongest winds, you're seeing the longest times for restoration, and that's common. But one of the points the president made is we've got to stop building these systems back to only the way that they were before the previous storm. We've got to start making sure that they are more resilient and that we do things smarter. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. With respect to gas, I can tell you the president has taken a number of steps, all of which are helpful. His administration has waived the red dye, or issued what I should call as a red dye waiver, so that off-road diesel can be used on the road in southeast Louisiana. They've authorized access to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and we have 2 refineries in Louisiana who have already gotten crude from the SPR pursuant to that, Exxon and Placid, and so that they can continue to make fuel. We know that he's waived the limits on the number of hours that truck drivers can drive, so that we can get more fuel trucks moving for longer periods of time. They also waived the rules around winter gas, because it's a little easier to refine winter gas and get it to market quicker, and so we're able to do that now, whereas we wouldn't have been able to do it before. But at the end of the day, this is the problem we have in Louisiana. 8 refineries went down. That's 2/3 of our refining capacity. It's 10% of the nation's refining capacity. 2 of those have come back up, but even when they come back up, it takes about a week or 10 days for the newly refined product to be ready to exit the refinery. Now, a grand total of 4 of the 8, we can at least access whatever product they had at the rack. So we can actually send trucks in there, for example, and that is happening. And we believe that the fuel situation has stabilized. It's not going to degrade further, and that from this day forward, it's just going to slowly get better. But there will be stations without enough gas, and there are people who are going to have to wait for some period of time in a line to get gas. And we're asking people to be patient and to be understanding. What happened at that Metairie service station is completely inexcusable, and that is not who we are as Louisianans. That is just not who we are. We're better than that. So the president has been helpful, but these are very difficult challenges to solve overnight, but I believe we're gonna see improvement from this day forward. Now, I wanna thank you all for continuing to cover this storm and providing accurate information to all the people across southeast Louisiana. I want to continue to urge people to be patient, be good neighbors, follow whatever telling you. I know, for example, there's a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew here in St. James Parish. Follow that. It's for your own safety. We have elevated law enforcement all across southeast Louisiana because when it's dark, sometimes people get a little foolish and they think they can get away with something that they would never contemplate otherwise. That's not going to happen. So we have elevated levels of law enforcement all across the state of Louisiana. And by the way, these communities in the parishes that I just mentioned where you have virtually 100% outages on electricity, it is not time to come back if you're evacuated. If you can stay where you are, or if you need additional assistance, call us. Access that assistance that I talked to you about. Because it is very difficult to sustain yourselves here. The schools aren't open, the stores aren't open, the hospitals are slammed if they're open. There's no electricity, no water, no stores, so please be patient. Come back when President Dufresne says it's time to come back to St. James Parish, for example. And if you need help staying going, access all of the assistance that we went over before. So let's continue to lift one another up in prayer. Let's work together. Let's get through this, and I know we will. I know we will. It's going to take some time. We're going to be here all the way through the process, working with our federal partners, all of our local partners, and I just want to thank again the people of Louisiana. Sometimes we get focused on the negative stories. I can assure you of this: there are 1,000 acts of kindness for every bit of foolishness that's happening out there. And I probably am understating that tremendously. There are at least 1,000 acts of kindness happening out there for every act of foolishness and meanness. That's why the people of Louisiana continue to inspire me. Thank you all, and God bless. Beg pardon? Oh, how bless you. Thank you. That's too damn much.